I'm going to read the first chapter, Dear Giles, Book 6, Gone. This is the hardback version that I'm reading from today. This book starts off about 5 miles from Newtown, in a place called Dolfor. The girl at the bus stop. It is amazing how much of a person's condition can be gleaned by that initial glance. A coat too thin to resist January's bite. Shoes worn, blonde hair unkempt. A young girl lost, but pretty. The girl was pretty. A runaway reading a magazine at a bus stop, her breath an ephemeral cloud around her head. 81-year-old Sheila Jones was about to go back to her weeding of dead leaves and woody stems when the girl looked up. A smile warmed her young features, and she raised a hand in a wave. Sheila waved back. 14. The girl looked about 14. For a moment, Sheila considered taking her a bigger coat. Something worth wearing. But the girl had already returned to her magazine, and Sheila thought better of it. The bus to Newtown would be along in just a couple of minutes. The older woman went back to her clearing work. The bus shuddered around the corner, and Sheila straightened up, pleased the girl would finally be able to get into somewhere warm. But she wasn't there. Sheila blinked. Definitely not there. The bus rolled on without stopping, clouds of diesel smoke fluttering the pages of the discarded magazine. Sheila reached for her walking cane and headed towards the gate, at the bottom of her garden, directly overlooking the road. She checked left and right, as far as she could see, but there was no one. She walked the few yards to the bus stop and picked up the dog-eared magazine, discarded mid-story. She saw what looked like a fresh droplet of blood. If it were not for that blood, she would have most likely forgotten about it, or else wondered if she had imagined the girl. She could count on her fingers the number of times she had seen a stranger at that bus stop, and they had never before disappeared. "Morning, Mom." Dewi gave a broad smile and placed a coffee to one side of his DI. "Good morning, Dewi," Yvonne smiled back, feeling as relaxed as she had for a while. "Where's the DCI? I thought he was going to brief us." "He had to go out. Didn't tell me where. He did, however, give me an address he'd like us to check out. Someone reported an abduction, apparently. Wants us to take a look." "An abduction? What abduction?" "I've no idea. It was the first I'd heard of it." Dewi sipped his coffee and winced at the heat. "I watched the local news too. No abduction mentioned on there." Yvonne shrugged. "No worries. Where are we going?" "Dolfor." "Right, drink up. We'd best be on it." Within half an hour they were outside Sheila Jones's cottage, taking in the well-kept hedges and neat borders. A path that was free of weeds. A topiary plant either side of the doorstep. Everything in its place. Sheila appeared at the door, as neat and orderly as her garden. Although clearly advanced in years, the frail lady wore her hair in a carefully arranged bun. Dressed in pale blue, she smelled of a mixture of soap and fabric conditioner. Her wizened eyes shone, and it was clear from her stare that Sheila Jones was in full possession of her probably considerable faculties. "Pleased to meet you." She held out a tremulous hand. Yvonne took it, simultaneously pulling out her warrant card. "Likewise. Where from?" Sheila had turned away, towards her sitting room. "I know who you are." She raised a hand and waved it, still looking ahead of her. "I've been expecting you." The DI shot a sideways glance at Dewi, who shrugged. Sheila's living room had a surprisingly modern feel, sisal carpet and a cream and beige colour scheme. She motioned them to sit. "My daughter helped me decorate." She smiled at Yvonne, as though reading her thoughts. Yvonne smiled back. "Your daughter has good taste." Dewi took out his notepad. "You telephoned us about an abduction you witnessed." "Yes." Sheila placed a supportive hand to her lower back as she settled herself into an armchair next to the window. "Can you tell us who was abducted?" Sheila frowned. I don't know who she was. Only that she was a stranger to the village. She was down on her luck. Derry looked up from his note-taking. A frown darkened his face. Yvonne took over. Tell us what happened, Mrs. Jones. Sheila sighed. I was in my garden just doing some tidying up, and I saw a young girl, around 14 years old, standing at the bus stop. She was reading a magazine. You said she wasn't from around here, Yvonne encouraged. She looked as though she'd been living rough. What makes you say that? Derry resumed his writing. Her hair was ruffled, maybe knotted. She wasn't properly dressed for the weather. Sheila sighed again and rubbed her chin. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I feel foolish. What colour was her hair? Yvonne tilted her head to one side. A mousy sort of blonde. She was reading a magazine, Sheila repeated. What happened then? Tell us about the induction. What did you see? Sheila paused, biting her lip. I didn't exactly see anything. It's more what I didn't see. Derry cleared his throat. Yvonne leaned towards the elderly woman, her gaze intense. What do you mean? One moment she was waiting for the bus to come along and waving at me, and the next, she was gone. When the bus did come along, it didn't stop. It just carried on towards Newtown. Derry sighed. Does it get lonely out here, Mrs. Jones? Sheila winced, and Yvonne shot her sergeant a stern look. Mrs. Jones continued. I went out to the gate, looked both ways along the road, and there was no girl. Then I saw her magazine at the roadside. I picked it up. That's when I saw the blood. What blood? Derry raised both eyebrows. Sheila pointed to her oak coffee table. It's on there. Yvonne rose from her seat to retrieve the magazine. The pages were scrunched, and there was a partial muddy footprint on one corner of the opened page. In the middle crease lay a single drop of blood, dried blood, about 1/2 centimetre in diameter. The droplet was still wet when I picked up the magazine. Sheila's eye contact was steady. Did you notice if any cars went past the bus stop, Mrs. Jones? Yvonne turned the magazine over, noting that it was Take a Break, and had been left in the middle of a story of forbidden love. Could it be that someone just picked her up? A friend, perhaps? I think a few cars went by. I didn't see any of them. I wasn't watching her after that, after she waved at me, until I heard the bus approaching and noticed she was gone. So I'm afraid I can't give you descriptions of the vehicles. May we take the magazine? Yvonne withdrew an evidence packet from her bag. Yes, of course. Are you going to look into it? Sheila's eyes flicked back and forth across the DI's face. Yes, Yvonne said simply, avoiding looking in Derry's direction. She sensed he was less than impressed. Then I am happy. Sheila smiled, though there was still a stiffness in the muscles around her eyes. That was chapter 1 of book 6 in the Giles series, Gone.